This video is supported by Brilliant. Hey, Marcus House with you here. Well, I could have made 2 of these videos this week if I'd had the time because it has been a crazy one. A huge amount to talk about with Starship and the Starbases as always, exciting test articles, Booster 7 rolling out, and so much more there. Falcon 9 flights aplenty, and then all of these things happened as well. So rather than listing them all out, let's just jump into it.
Okay, Neil, we can see you coming down the ladder now.
Yet another fun week of Starship news. As I touched on last weekend, during the Starlink launch we could see the construction of the orbital launch pad at Launch Complex 39A was about to get underway. You could see the first tower segment, the boom for the LR-11-350 crane being constructed, and some odd ring structures nearby here which we're still trying to figure out. During this week, the massive crane in the power boom configuration transitioned to its upright position, ready for the construction of the orbital launch and integration tower. On Tuesday morning, thanks to this terrific footage from Spaceflight Now, we could see SpaceX lifting that first segment of the tower into place on top of the concrete base. This section, along with all of the other completed prefabricated tower sections, have a variety of railings, elevator shafts, doorways, walkways, hardpoints, plumbing, and pre-installed stuff. Each section and all of its plumbing and hardware will just need to be connected after each stack, and the process should be far easier and faster than the methods SpaceX used in South Texas. While talking about the orbital launch tower, Spaceflight Now also captured sections of the chopstick arms making their way to the Cape on the back of a truck. Following that, another section of the launch tower headed over and was stacked very soon after. Meanwhile, over at the Texas Starbase production facility, the Buckner LR-11000 crane, not to be confused with SpaceX's one, was laid down possibly for the final time after completing its work on the Mega Bay. Once it was fully laying down on the ground, teams began the task of disassembling this giant beast. Just beside where the Mega Bay is being constructed is the new Star Factory building, which has progressed greatly since we last spoke about it. Thanks to these amazing views by RGV aerial photography, we can see the true scale of this massive building. The team has been seen working on the roof already, with the insulation being laid down, followed by the roof panelling itself. Once they lift up the pieces for the last end wall, we should start to see the work on the roof really ramp up. Nearby, we see a load of air conditioning units that we think will be mounted here on the side of the building. It would get super hot in here too, especially in the summer, so certainly a requirement. Now, after being moved to the launch site last week, the B7.1 test tank was rolled over to the can crusher and was attached to SpaceX's LR-11000 crane to lift it onto the can crusher base. The crane was detached and it soon picked up the can crusher cap, placing it on top. The next step before testing, of course, was to attach the ropes to the bottom of the can crusher. So yes, the entire stack there sat close by the so-called E-Dome test tank. That's a completely different test tank, by the way, which doesn't have the stringers up the top here like the 7.1 tank. So, as we get closer to the exciting test campaign of Booster 7 and Ship 24 with the orbital flight test just months away, Elon Musk recently provided hints on the process, saying that there will probably be several launch countdowns before SpaceX passes all of those abort triggers. Still very optimistic sounding for July, so yes, it's going to be fun to see how many attempts it will take to get through the full process. The news of the week really though was the rollout of Booster 7, this time with all 33 engines installed. SpaceX posted a few aerial shots on their Twitter account. Check these out. The massive 70-metre tall beast with humans for scale. Just an hour later, arriving at the launch site, it was finally time to see the huge tower arms lift Booster 7 onto the orbital launch mount. Given this was the very first time, they took it very slowly and carefully. It moved over to the arms and rolled between them, then waited several hours before the lift was finally underway at 10:30 p.m. Once high enough, the booster was rotated around directly over the orbital launch mount, and carefully it was lowered until the alignment pins on the mount could be inserted. Now, this ensures that it is completely stable before it is finally lowered into place without damaging the outer 20 Raptor boost engines. Once all of the hold down clamps were engaged, the arms were able to let go, leaving it freestanding right there. The arms then moved back down into a resting position at the bottom of the tower, and the ship quick disconnect arm extended back out. So yes, how cool is that? The very first lift ever of a booster using the arms, and it looked absolutely flawless. It is now time for static fire testing. It is unclear what the testing campaign will look like. I'd be guessing a few single engine tests, followed by tests of the full rings, perhaps then even a full 33 Raptor test fire. Wishful thinking perhaps, but if they do that, I would bet they would have all those Raptor 2s throttled right down to the minimum. I can't wait to share what we've learned by this time next week. Regarding its companion Ship 24, RGV captured this shot from above of the previously unknown mystery box that we now believe is a loading mechanism to feed Starlink version 2 satellites into the ships. Where will those satellites come from? Well, one thought is that this new Pez dispenser loader may be filled up itself at this new building here. Imagine that Starlink satellites are dropped off and stored at this location, and the white box there simply pulls in to be topped up for the next Starship. Now, just to be clear, this is all pure speculation, but fun speculation, I think you'll agree. Along with that, the next ship in line, Ship 25, had its Starlink dispenser rack lifted into its nose cone barrel on Wednesday. Heading down the road to the launch site, the amazing Starship Gazer captured new scaffolding going up at the top of the orbital launch tower. In fact, you can actually see the new lightning truss installed in the lower part of the scaffolding there. I was wondering if we would see some sort of lightning protection system at the top. Now we have that answer. The SpaceX team have also been seen working on the 2 vertical methane tanks that never passed the approvals to actually hold liquid methane. Because there is now plenty of the methane storage in the horizontal tanks, could they possibly be turning these into extra liquid oxygen or liquid nitrogen tanks? All of that extra oxygen would be handy if that leaves enough nitrogen to use for super chilling all of the propellant. It's really hard to know exactly how much nitrogen they need for that job. Anyway, we're not really going to have a concrete idea until we see the final plumbing, but I'm interested to know what you think. Nearby, at the suborbital side of the launch facility, workers have been seen modifying suborbital Pad B to support testing of the Ship 22 design and up. These are the same modifications that suborbital Pad A went through, with the 6 hold-down clamps being replaced, as well as a new quick disconnect system which is currently in progress. From this ground shot here, you can see the quick disconnect panel there, and just a few days later, workers were seen connecting up the flex hoses to hook up the panel to the propellant farm. So there's loads of great work going on as the site prepares for launch. Shout out this week goes to TijnM for this incredibly beautiful new render of a future Starship being caught out of the sky by the tower arms. It still kind of blows my mind that this could be attempted. Certainly one of those believe it when you see it kind of scenes. Remember though, people were extremely skeptical for a long time before Falcon 9 landings too, and here we are seeing them daily in some cases. Everything is impossible until it's done. Give Tijn a follow there. It's always super helpful of you to support the community's great work. And again, I'm getting a bunch of people telling me that they've been unsubscribed here without doing it themselves. Those comments had died off for a while, but they're back again. So I don't know. YouTube is all just black magic to me. Every time I think that I kind of know what's going on, something else changes. Anyway, shortly after my video last Saturday went live, there were 2 more SpaceX Falcon 9 launches from opposite sides of the country. Rounding out a record-breaking 3 launches in under 37 hours was the Sarah 1 mission from the West Coast, followed by the Globalstar FM-15 from the East Coast. With the West Coast launch of Sarah 1, I was not surprised at all by this view when the coverage began from Pad 4E at Vandenberg Space Force Station. Just look at that fog layer. You can barely even make out the Falcon 9 there getting ready to launch. Inside the fairings of this one was the 4-ton Sarah 1 satellite built by Airbus. Now, something that I don't often appreciate is the amazing job behind the scenes that the teams go through to get the satellites ready for launch. Sarah 1 had to be shipped from Germany, of course, and it was pretty impressive seeing the video of the logistics effort required to get it all the way here. It was a 25-day odyssey covering 8 US states. Once it first arrived in Baltimore, the cargo was masterfully loaded onto the deck of the waiting semi before being secured and then hitting the road. Now, I know the crews here are professional truck drivers, but just imagine hauling such expensive cargo all that distance. An incredible job from all those involved as the payload arrives at Vandenberg. So yes, fast forward, and now here we were waiting at the pad for liftoff. And there we go, it's a ascent on its way, punching through that low altitude fog layer and into the clear blue sky onward to orbit. Some great views here of the 9 Merlin engines powering the Falcon 9, and with that we soon had main engine cutoff, stage separation, and goodbye to that second stage. That was all we saw of it, because due to the customer request, SpaceX didn't show the second stage coverage. Just this magic as the booster completed its boost back burn to head back to landing zone 4, very close to where it lifts off from. Remember, the booster rapidly removes its velocity, but it also keeps climbing for a while too. After just moments, it was time for the re-entry burn, shedding enough velocity to keep it intact as it plunges back into the atmosphere. The coverage from the ground layer was tough there due to the fog, but there we go, yet another perfect landing after popping back through that layer and onto landing zone 4. That was this booster's third flight and landing, so only an infant compared to the Starlink record-breaking 13th flight just before this one. Next up, on the east coast this time, SpaceX were preparing Globalstar FM-15 at Pad 40 Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. With this mission launching on time, it was under 37 hours for all 3 launches. And here I was a few weeks ago sarcastically wondering why we weren't seeing as much launch activity as usual that week. How soon things change. The Falcon 9 booster for this mission had 8 previous successful missions completed already, but this 9th flight was an intriguing mission to deliver the Globalstar 15 voice and data communication satellite to orbit. It was a beautiful clear night shot of the liftoff as Falcon 9 roared off into the darkness just after midnight local time. Most of the footage from this launch was from the ground shot right up until the stage separation. The darkness didn't give us the most beautiful sight of the descent of the first stage, but all the same, the signal never seemed to cut out at all. The landing burn there as it made its way back for a safe touchdown on the drone ship. Just read the instructions. Just a little off-center with this one. The second stage process with this was a little less common. It had a big trip ahead of it with a lengthy coast phase broken up by 3 second stage burns as it headed to its deployment orbit. And there we go, FM-15 was on its way. Now, that would normally be the end of the story, but some interesting speculation in the space community was quite intriguing after this mission, suggesting that there was a secret payload. With the FM-15 satellite weighing in at only around 700 kilograms, this means that the capacity of Falcon 9 would have been underutilized. Well, it didn't take long for an astronomer to tweet here showing the detection of 4 satellites on an orbital inclination very close to that of FM-15. Now, speculation on my part here, but I do like a good mystery. It would be interesting, I think, if these were the first 4 ballistic and hypersonic detection and tracking satellites for the Space Development Agency. That contract was awarded to SpaceX back in October 2020, with delivery set for September of this year. So yes, that is a part of a potentially larger constellation based on the Starlink bus and optical relay system that they call the tracking layer.
The infallible Sherlock Holmes has indeed spoken. Court is adjourned.
Sherlock Holmes has done it again!
Anyway, let me know what you think about that in the comments below. With the successful payload deployment here, the mission came to a close, and with that I believe that this was a record triple orbital flight all within that 37-hour period. Certainly a record for SpaceX at least. An amazing achievement with Elon Musk there sending this out to the team. SpaceX is making it look so easy now, aren't they? It is certainly interesting to wonder why it is that Falcon 9 is still the only orbital booster to land or refly after all of these years. Back in December 2015 was the first, and no other has been able to reproduce that so far. As Musk stated, without government protection, they would be in a lot of trouble, and we're not even talking yet about Starship capabilities as they become available. We of course had the SLS Artemis 1 wet dress rehearsal attempt this week. This was the 4th attempt in total and the first that had occurred since it was rolled back to the pad since their fixes. Now there was a few hiccups here, but at least the team for the first time fully loaded all of the Space Launch System's propellant tanks. That meant that they could proceed into the mock terminal launch countdown. The propellant loading wasn't completely successful though. The launch controllers encountered a hydrogen leak in the quick disconnect that attaches the umbilical from the tail service mast on the mobile launcher to the core stage. Although they attempted to fix that by warming the quick disconnect, chilling it back down and then reconnecting it, that didn't fix the problem. So that they could knock off some more of the countdown items, they were able to mask that leak data to trick the system into letting them continue. During the terminal countdown, they were able to perform several critical operations that would be used for a real launch. In the end, though, the clock was stopped at T-minus 29 seconds instead of the intended T-minus 10 second mark. Now, although the missing 19 seconds there may not sound like a lot, these are critical seconds involving a lot of moving parts and processes. At first, it wasn't clear if they would need to conduct a 6th attempt at a full wet dress rehearsal, but soon after, it was announced that they would roll it back to the vehicle assembly building, repair the leak, and then roll it back in late August for its first launch. Which is going to fly first, SLS or Starship? Place your bets. Now, a successful flight of Arianespace's VA257, but I tell you, the coverage was just, well, you decide. Here we see Ariane 5 launch. Great, right? Okay, change the camera. Change camera. Hey, where's the rocket? Show us the rocket. And then we get switched to this, a picture in a picture in a picture. And yes, much of the flight was played in that frame, sometimes at least, zooming back out just into the picture in a picture. Just check this out.
Boosters,
Yeah, we can see it.
which
It's
have finished their
incredible.
jobs. Yes,
Yeah.
we have very good images tonight. We have.
That's the
apparently
first
very
time we
clear
see it
skies.
so clearly. That's incredible.
Well, yes, it was nice for some Arianespace, wasn't it? Anyway, the launch of these two satellites on board were MEASat 3D and GSat 24, weighing in at almost 11 metric tons. And there they were, successfully injected into a geostationary transfer orbit. Now we're kind of feeling a little spoiled with SpaceX coverage now, aren't we? Now, one cool thing this week is that Blue Origin released this quite jaw-dropping video of their BE4 engine startup sequence on Twitter, which I thought was incredibly neat. This is the pre-burner injector hardware as the engine ignition sequence is initiated. Keep in mind that this is a very high-speed camera, so this is super slow-mo. To what degree is not really shown, but we can even see pressure waves oscillating during the short period of combustion instability as the engine starts. Although it is old footage, it is terrific to see. I wonder how long that camera lasted after this shot was taken. Hopefully we're going to see these babies in action finally with the Vulcan Centaur, still hoping for a flight by the end of this year, but there seems to be a lot of skepticism on that lately, with many thinking that it may fall into 2023 due to engine and payload delays. A key moment this week for ESA and JAXA as Bepi Colombo's second Mercury flyby occurred on the 23rd of June. It was super close to the surface at around 200 kilometres in altitude. It is a long journey for this spacecraft, having been launched late in 2018, and it takes a total of around 7 years to get to its final orbit around Mercury. That is because it needs to do a bunch of gravity assists to slow down relative to the little planet. In fact, this is only 2 out of the 6 in total that it needs to do at Mercury before it'll be slowed enough to have the ability to insert into its final orbit. Now, there are actually 2 separate orbiters within the payload here, the Mercury Planetary Orbiter and the Mercury Magnetospheric Orbiter. These together are going to perform a comprehensive study of Mercury, providing us with unknown data of its magnetic fields and the magnetosphere from the interior of the planet and the surface as well. The final insertion into Mercury's orbit should occur right at the end of 2025, but in the meantime, we get to see some great new shots of this little planet on the flyby here. They had 3 monitoring cameras activated during this flyby to help capture that great information. Now, the International Space Station needed a quick boost a little over a week ago because of a piece of space junk from the Russian anti-satellite weapon test at the end of 2021. I won't go into that further as I covered it all back at the time, but due to the likelihood of impact, Russia's Roscosmos used the uncrewed Progress 81 cargo ship to adjust the orbit to avoid the hazard. It was nice of them to uncharacteristically own up to this one and confirm that it was indeed space debris caused by them. Great news out of South Korea this week as well, with the second launch and the first successful mission to orbit of their homegrown rocket known as Nuri. I'll talk about that more in a moment, but real quick, a massive thank you to Brilliant for supporting today's video. Are you looking to pick up some new knowledge in math and science, perhaps even wanting to brush up on some existing knowledge? As I'm sure you would agree, there is no better way to learn something than to run through exercises with beautiful visual examples that explain the why behind a certain topic. Brilliant provides the ultimate experience in just this. It's an interactive STEM learning platform that allows you to play in this way. Take these freshly updated examples demonstrating the boiling point of water and how you can manipulate it. Great exercises as well on gear rotation and gear ratios. It's all great base knowledge for much more complex ideas like this. You will find that once you are able to visually play with these puzzle examples, you will understand the principles very quickly. Once your mind is open, you can't help but look at similar problems in a completely new way. That is the great thing with Brilliant. It isn't sitting there trying to memorize formulas or facts for a test. You can progress at any speed you want. You just pick a course that you are interested in from the many provided and get started. If you are also naturally curious and you want to explore as well, do yourself a favor and check it out. Just head to brilliant.org/MarcusHouse and the first 200 people will get 20% off the first year of Brilliant Premium. The link is in the description. Thank you, Brilliant. So yes, success for the second launch of Nuri. Sadly, their first mission failed last October due to the third stage engine cutting off earlier than expected. Developed at a cost of around $1.6 billion, this was a moment 30 years in the making. Launching from the Nauru Space Center, the three-stage 47-meter-long rocket was powered by 4 KRE-075 kerosene and liquid oxygen-fueled engines. Reaching the desired 700-kilometer altitude then saw deployment of a performance test satellite some 14 minutes after liftoff. The test satellites themselves were developed by local universities and were set for deployment in the days after launch. So yes, this mission success was shared on social media soon after, so congratulations to all involved in this monumentous achievement. Now, keep your eyes focused on Rocket Lab because the exciting capstone mission to the moon is set to launch very soon as tweeted during the week. This mission has been delayed now a number of times, but fingers crossed that we're going to be seeing this one in more depth next week. This will be a defining moment for Rocket Lab and it'll be their very first deep space assignment using the lunar photon. I just can't wait to watch the coverage of the vehicle as it places itself into a near rectilinear halo orbit around the moon. That is the same orbit that is planned for the future NASA Gateway. So yes, I told you, didn't I? It was a busy one. You are all caught up on yet another week of space goodness. If I have earned your subscription today, a massive welcome to you. And if you love the stuff that I talk about here on the channel, remember to simply share and inspire all those around you with these stories. So many people just don't even know the significance of the space industry right now. What SpaceX is about to do with the most powerful rocket ever constructed is astounding. We are at a true tipping point and everyone supporting that around the world makes a huge difference. To help with what I do specifically, like all of these incredibly awesome people, the Patreon link is right there, which gives you ad-free video releases and access to our member Discord. And if you want some new gear like this one and many other designs, this is a terrific way to support as well. The tile in the bottom left today will take you back to last week's video if you missed it. The top right is my latest video, and the bottom right, content that YouTube thinks you will like from the channel. Thanks as always for watching all this way through. That helps a huge amount, and I'll see you all in the next video.